If you were looking for yet another generic open world action stealth hybrid with RPG elements and almost nothing unique to offer, then I have some great news. Star Wars Outlaws is exactly the game you were looking for. In 2024, it has become a bit of a buzzword to associate Ubisoft design with any open world game featuring a map with zones and collectibles, but this is a fairly accurate representation of the DNA present in Outlaws here. Being Ubisoft's first major release of 2024, Massive Entertainment have taken what they know from their Tom Clancy's The Division history and merged it with Assassin's Creed DNA to make a game that might please the Star Wars mega fans, but will likely leave regular players underwhelmed. What you've read online is true. Yes, it is bland. Yes, it is the most buggy game I've played in 2024, and yes, it will frustrate more than delight. But there's also clearly some love for Star Wars buried deep, very deep here, and it's up to you on whether it's worth digging through the dirt to find that love. Taking place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, Star Wars Outlaws puts you in the pilot seat of amateur orphaned outlaw Kay Vess, and her obviously designed for mascot appeal sidekick Nix. After some big theft jobs go wrong back home, Kay's on the run from mob outfit Zarek Besh, and is forced to try and hit it big as an outlaw to be able to erase the death marker put on her. There's just one problem with this setup. Kay Vess is not a likeable character in the slightest. This isn't just Kay though. All of the allies, or dare I say friends, suffer from the unfortunate illness that is bad character syndrome. This is largely thanks to the fact that Star Wars Outlaws has achieved the award of having the most stiff, boring, and generic dialogue I have had to sit through in years.
Looks like a fun town.
You're not from here. Who's the mark?
The boss named Slero. Runs a syndicate called Zarek Besh. They're new, they're rich, and rumor has it they've got the underworld scared.
Which means security.
Enough. But a fortune for us if you can get to his vault.
No one speaks like a Star Wars character. No one has any juice or sauce or personality. It's so sad to see in a franchise with so much inspiration to pull from. As Kay goes about her adventure to hit it big and get clear of her death mark, she'll have to work with local crime syndicates such as the Hutts and the Crimson Dawn. This is the one time that the bad dialogue and unlikable characters actually has a positive impact, since it makes perfect sense that major mob bosses are huge assholes and terrible company. This one aspect of the game and story I'm actually pretty fond of. Constantly allying, betraying, and re-allying with different factions based on your internal morals and likes or dislikes makes for a playthrough you can really call your own, and is the one unique thing that I can say Star Wars Outlaws brings to the table. I unfortunately cannot give the same praise to the main story, since not only does it stay boring, predictable, and unlikable for the whole thing, it also features some of the most frustrating gameplay the game has to offer. So let's just rip the band-aid off here. For the most part, the gameplay in Outlaws is not good. Yes, it has your typical Ubisoft open world with collectibles to find everywhere, but it scales some of these aspects down somewhat compared to the Assassin's Creed games that at least I'm familiar with. The planets, which there are a handful of present including fan favourites such as Tatooine, are broken down into regions, but instead of your typical tower climbing and objective lists, the game focuses more on visual landmarks where loot and small quests can be found. I don't mind this approach, because if fully exploring the map isn't your thing, then you don't really miss out on anything important by just going quest to quest. But if it is your thing, then over the course of your playthrough, you're likely to stop and look at every location you come across anyway, and aren't going to need to go out of your way clearing off sections of the map. It puts exploration fully in the player's hands to decide how much they would like to do. You won't be stuck having to walk across the planets. Fast travel points are quite rare in this game, so you'll be spending most of your time traversing the planets zooming on your trusty speeder. This is one of only 2 vehicles in the game, and it feels okay to ride around on. The speeder is definitely functional, it works, but it controls a little stiff, and I never really found myself having heaps of fun riding around. A lot of people liken Outlaws to being the Star Wars GTA game, but if that is the case, then the speeder is a pale imitation of what GTA offers with its vehicle selection and controls. The combat is another section where Outlaws disappoints, the two focuses being stealth and action. With the game splitting itself in both directions, unfortunately it ends up failing in both. The stealth is your typical run-of-the-mill Ubisoft stealth, sneak up behind and knock the enemy out, or do the same from afar but much less frequently. The action combat doesn't get much deeper, with a basic 3-hit melee combo and a blaster with 3 different types of rounds it can shoot for different purposes. That's all there is. No weapon variety or really any depth. Yes, you can loot dead enemies and use their weapons for a few rounds before it empties, but there's no actual weapon selection on offer here and very little build customization. The worst part of all this is when the game locks you into a forced stealth section. When creeping through enemy bases, you are usually forced into stealth, with getting caught being the end of your attempt and checkpoints being very few and far between. While Outlaws does have space gameplay in Kay's ship, I'm sad to say that this aspect of the game is also quite underwhelming. You do have space combat with a couple of weapons attached to the ship, but it never reaches anywhere close to anything of substance, and the game doesn't really have enough mandatory ship sections to make this feel like anything more than an afterthought tacked on for padded content. When you take the ship into orbit, expect to spend most of your time flying in a straight line and looking at the pretty effects. The factions mentioned earlier have an important part in the gameplay. Allying with one faction will allow you to access better stocks and prices with their affiliated merchants, and also give you access to parts of their territories without pulling weapons on you. This makes it fun to side with one gang, get what you need from them, then be the huge asshole outlaw you are and betray them to score brownie points with a rival gang and do it all over again. The last part of the gameplay to speak on would actually be Kay's partner in crime, Nyx. Seems like the Outer Rim territories really like their PS2 era platformers, because Nyx will be on your shoulder along the whole game, just like Daxter or Clank, but Nyx here does bring some nice additions to the gameplay. Nyx can be given orders to do anything from pickpocketing a nearby NPC, to picking up a faraway item that Kay can't get to, or hitting a switch Kay can't reach, to jumping on an enemy to provide a distraction while Kay takes down their pal next to them. Nyx is an essential part of Kay's toolkit for almost every situation, and there's a satisfying element to learning Nyx's timings well enough to be able to take down a group of 3 guards all at once without getting caught. Over the course of your playthrough in Star Wars Outlaws, you'll be taking on several different types of quests. You've got your main story, side quests which are few in number but still have decent production value. Then there's the typical fetch quests, small throwaway contracts for a bit of extra rep and money, and expert quests which unlock new sections of the abilities menu. This is where the bulk of the value in the side content lies. In your abilities tab of the menu, there are 9 different sections, each with their own expert, who starts off and inspires that ability section. Different abilities require different things, from feats being done in combat, to items collected, to quests done. These abilities and upgrades are truly invaluable, but not for great reason. You see, the base gameplay in Outlaws is honestly outright bad. Movement speed in stealth is abysmally slow, there are almost no tools on offer, your health and healing item capacities are so small they may as well not exist. It is only with many ability unlocks that the gameplay starts to feel actually decent. Now don't mistake me, it never gets good, but it does reach average or acceptable with upgrades. The big issue here is that a lot of the upgrade sections are only started about halfway through the game or so, meaning that you're going to have to put up with outright bad gameplay for quite a long time. This is the same with the blaster weapon, speeder, and ship. There are materials that can be looted on the planets or purchased from vendors and can be used to upgrade your weapons and vehicles, but these upgrades only take things from outright bad to okay. 10 hours into the game, my blaster still only had its basic single shot, and with how many shots it was taking to kill enemies, it got to the point that if I triggered combat, I would just die on purpose because that option was less bad than actually attempting the combat. Let's all be honest here though. You're not going to be coming to this game for its gameplay or its story. You're interested in Outlaws because you like Star Wars, so you're probably wondering how Ubisoft did in their first attempt with the Star Wars universe. I'm pleased to say, they actually did a pretty decent job when it comes to this aspect. Most of the areas really do have that Star Wars feel and flair to it, and you can tell that every part of each world and level was made authentic to the Star Wars universe. I've even heard from people online that they were able to find specific locations on planets based on nothing but pre-existing knowledge of landmarks and directions of these planets from the decades of lore, so clearly the team here had some very dedicated fans of the franchise making sure things were as authentic as possible. It definitely helps that the areas in Outlaws are honestly gorgeous, from the far reaches of the planets all the way into its cities. Each area is filled with such visual detail, which is why I'm sad to say that the PlayStation 5 version that I played suffers from some pretty bad clarity issues in performance mode trying to keep its 60 FPS frame rate. There seems to be some sort of really strong DLSS in this mode, and it just makes things like hair look really pixelated and quite heavily blurs the city areas, which is a shame because they are so gorgeous graphically. The music in Outlaws is honestly pretty hit and miss for me personally. There are some really fun tracks that make me feel totally at home in the Star Wars library, but a lot of the main story missions feel like if a Melbourne DJ had a Star Wars remix night where he had to try and make it as targeted for Gen Z as possible, and these tracks just take you out of the experience so badly. No one wants to listen to wub-wub electronic modernizations of Star Wars medleys when you're stealthing through Imperial ships. Thankfully, the sound effects don't seem to have these issues. Your blasters and vehicles are all going to make all you Star Wars fans right at home. The voice acting may or may not do the same thing for you. I personally found that the characters speaking Huttese sounded so accurate and well performed, they could have passed for lines ripped straight out of the original trilogy, but anyone speaking basic sounded way too modern 2024 for my tastes. I'm not sure if it's just the modern American accent they used, or the stiff lame dialogue, but nearly every major character talking normally just did not sound like a Star Wars character. It's a real shame, because with a better script, dialogue, and better voice direction, I think the voice acting could have made this feel much more like a true Star Wars experience. If you've seen anything online about the game since it launched, you've probably seen or heard about how buggy the game is. A lot of games get a reputation for being buggy at launch, and I usually get pretty lucky with my playthroughs, but I was not spared here at all. The people are right, this game is a horribly buggy mess, and really needed a bit more time to cook in the oven, except for the fact that if it was delayed, then it would have eaten into the sales of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Anything from crashes to the console home, enemies clipping through the floor and causing horribly loud collision noises, to the player falling through the ground entirely or getting stuck between geometry and an NPC, this game has it all, man. If you do buy and play this game, then be sure to make your own bingo card beforehand so that when any bugs happen, you can still have some fun and not just want to snap your disc, because man, it is just so frustrating going through a game where you have at least one bug happen pretty much every hour of playtime. If dealing with these kinds of experience isn't really to your liking, wait a few months for the game to go on sale and hope that Ubisoft have released some performance and stability patches by then. So the big question, do I think Star Wars Outlaws is worth playing? Well, it depends. Do you want a solid open world experience to kill some time and have some fun? Then no. In today's market, there are so many of this style of game out there, and almost any other option will tick your boxes and be a better experience. Do you love Star Wars and want another, kinda different experience than what the franchise has been offering? Then yes, but it comes with a couple of caveats. If you're interested in Outlaws, then you're going to need to give the game some time to cook. My playthrough lasted me sometime between 35 and 40 hours or so before my journey was over, and for the first 15 to 20 hours, I was having a completely miserable time. Between the very poor starting abilities that make the gameplay feel awful, the horrible start to the story with the first arc, and the writing not being up to par, I was having a really tough time finding anything at all to like about this game, and this review was originally going to be laid out very differently. It was only after I gave the game some time to unlock abilities and upgrade gear, that it all started melding together, and systems started to not only work, but feel kind of decent. By this point, the plot definitely was improving as well, and by the end of the game, I'd had a smile on my face and could honestly say that I had fun and did not hate the game. Once you get through the awful first half, you start to see that there was some heart and soul put into this game. You just have to dig deep enough to find it. I don't know what happened during development for the game to come out feeling like this. All I can say is that it's a shame the game turned out this way, because a lot of people aren't going to be able to give this game enough time to get to a point where they'll start enjoying what it has to offer. If the game didn't have these inconsistent quality issues and technical bugs, I could see this being a decently well liked and received game, and I'm sure it would have sold better also. I will be giving Star Wars Outlaws a score of 5 out of 10. Personally, I'm just very happy that Star Wars Outlaws can be a game that I'll be happy to keep on my shelf and smile on as a game that I spent many an hour shit talking and hating on, only to find some real love hidden deep in there thanks to committing to it. I hope the developers get a chance to make a sequel to this someday, because I just know that if they took the feedback from this game and worked on improving what was already good, they could have a truly beloved Star Wars experience for people both in and out of the fandom. Now I've got to go, guys. I've just got the contract bounty on a guy hiding out on Dathomir, and my credit shits are running low. See you around, guys.